episode codename Our Daily Bread.
I'm headed to the bottom of the bottle. I've been drowning, I've been floating away. Every other dollar that I got in bed, I probably went and pissed it away. I ain't fucking okay, I ain't liking it, babe. I don't even wanna talk, I'm just smoking my haze. I've been stuck in my ways, I've been stuck in for days. I've been staring at the clock as the radio plays. I'm enslaved. Yeah, rolling another, I'm stuck in my seat from the whole control of my speech. Yeah, I've been trying to get off this couch for a minute and a whole damn week. No kidding, I'm skinny, I cannot eat. Got a million motherfuckers that depend on me. Yeah, every friend in my family, from a girl, every fan I meet myself. I'm too on till I'm too off. Come down, make new thoughts, like jumping off of that rooftop. Oh my God, when I do nothing, make moves based on my mood drops. Like who's lost? Like who's lost? It's yo, steadily killing me, running my brain full of shame, I don't wanna lose it. Full of stage, trying to find my pain. I see the sun coming out of that rain. Minds ain't really not tame, I'ma never slow down, I'ma never behave. Stuck inside this prison, inside this cage, it's taking over on me. Yeah, I'm a slave for you. Slave for you. Ripping harder, more less. Never stop, no rest. Till the stress is breath in my chest. Till it's diamonds wrapping my neck. Progress to a god from a goddamn mess. Hopeless, more tests. More blessed. Dug deep down trying to find my best. Find a beast, had to kill a conquest. I'm next. I'm too on till I'm too off. Come down, make new thoughts. Like jumping off of that rooftop. Oh my God, when I do nothing, make moves based on my mood drops. Like who's lost? Like who's lost? It's yo, steadily killing me, running my brain full of shame, I don't wanna lose it. I'm full of stage, trying to find my pain. I see the sun coming out of that rain. Minds ain't really not tame, I'ma never slow down, I'ma never behave. Stuck inside this prison, inside this cage, it's taking over on me. Yeah, I'm a slave for you.
You're going to be doing some lines for me today, Mr. Potter. No, not with your quill. I'm going to be using a rather special one of mine.
Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today?
Now, I want you to write, I must not tell lies.
How many times?
Well, let's say for as long as it takes for the message to sink in.
The Biden administration is facing fierce backlash for convening a group called the Disinformation Governance Board.
How are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Homeland Security recently rolled out the board, giving few details on how it will function, saying it will examine disinformation about threats, but will not have operational power and will not monitor U.S. citizens. Civil liberties advocates are questioning the idea.
We can't even agree what disinformation is.
On Wednesday, Republican lawmakers pressed Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, calling for the disinformation group to be disbanded, some dubbing it the Truth Police.
I think it's a terrible idea. It communicates to the world that we're going to be spreading propaganda within our country. It's an awful idea.
Mayorkas disagreed, saying the group will not infringe on freedom of speech or privacy rights. He says fighting disinformation is vital to protecting the homeland.
We become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country.
But Senator Shelley Moore Capito called the Disinformation Board Orwellian.
Now is a good time to abandon this ludicrous and much maligned idea. I wonder, when you say that we have operational control of the border, is that definitionally disinformation? Because from a lot of our perspectives, we don't believe that is true.
The White House says the board will focus only on threats and will be apolitical.
You haven't given me any ink.
Oh, you would need any.
Free thinking, innovative, totally open-minded. Tommy Nation Politics. Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today?
For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted.
CBC's Shamari Stone is here reporting on the victims. What more have we learned about them?
Well, today was just a very devastating time for people who live in this predominantly African-American community, Shep. Many of them are sad, they're angry, they're filled with anger, trying to understand why this happened. We're learning more about the victims in this case, and many of them tell us they're upset.
He had to kill her like that.
Tremaine Bryce is filled with agony, remembering his close friend, 32-year-old Roberta Drury. She leaves the house to buy food for dinner at the Tops Friendly Market. The suspected shooter steps out of his car and shoots her in the head, her lifeless body lying on the ground.
She's not gonna come home no more. And she's not gonna come down the street no more.
Drury helped care for her brother, who is recovering from cancer.
She was a good, caring person. That she always gonna tell the truth. And she was loving.
Aaron Salter, the store's security guard and retired Buffalo police officer. Pearlie Young, a mother, grandmother, who ran a food pantry for years. Catherine Macy, a community activist who used to write for the Buffalo News. Hayward Patterson, a church deacon. Celestine Cheney, a breast cancer survivor. Many of the victims were parents, grandparents, sisters, and brothers. Ruth Whitfield, the oldest victim at 86, was on her way from visiting her husband in a nursing home and stopped by the supermarket.
We're not just hurting, we're angry, we're mad.
Her family breaking down in tears at a news conference.
Took away my mother and my best friend. How dare you? How dare you?
Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for what is right, for they shall be filled.
Welcome back to CBS Mornings. That is Tops Friendly Market in East Buffalo, New York, where the investigation into the deadly mass shooting over the weekend is still going on. An 18-year-old white man is accused of what police call an act of racially motivated violent extremism. 10 people were killed and 3 others were hurt. This was one of 5 mass shootings to occur in this country from Friday evening to Sunday night. We saw them in California, Texas, Wisconsin, and North Carolina, along with Western New York. In Chicago, where gun violence has become routine, 5 people were killed and 35 wounded in shootings over the weekend. President Biden plans to go to Buffalo tomorrow to meet with the community. Ed O'Keefe is at the White House. Ed, good morning.
Well, good morning. All of those shootings you mentioned from over the weekend once again raise questions about what, if anything, should be done to curb the rise of violent extremism in this country or to regulate firearms. President Biden addressed a police memorial service Sunday here in Washington. He called for unity. He mentioned the shooting in Buffalo, but he didn't make any mention of gun control. He has taken some steps to crack down on gun violence through executive action. And just on Friday, he urged mayors and police chiefs to use some of the federal pandemic relief money they've received in the last 2 years to boost police and public safety budgets. But Democrats have been blocked from passing major gun control legislation for years. Notably, over the weekend, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said her chamber is going to try to take up legislation again in the coming weeks to combat domestic terrorism. But even so, whether it's shootings at flea markets, supermarkets, classrooms, churches, outside NBA games, or inside shopping malls, there is no sign that the White House and Congress are going to take meaningful action to address gun control or the rise of violent extremism anytime soon.
I think what's important to note here is what the board is doing, which is continuing what is important disinformation-related work that began under the former administration. The fact sheet that they put out, what they noted yesterday, what they noted in there is that this is meant to, one, the first bullet was about protecting privacy, civil rights, and civil liberties, and the First Amendment. They said the primary mission is to establish best practices to ensure that efforts to understand and respond to disinformation are done in ways that protect privacy, civil rights, and civil liberties. I'd also note that the first example they gave about what they're going to do is support the Department of Homeland Security's ongoing work back to the former administration to address how and understand how misinformation spread by human smugglers that prey on vulnerable populations attempting to migrate to the United States.
Former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard is with us. How do you feel? How do you feel about the Ministry of Truth?
This is the kind of thing that you see in dictatorships, this Ministry of Truth, this Department of Propaganda that the Biden administration has just stood up. And the reason why you see this in dictatorships is because they're afraid of us. They're afraid of the people. They're afraid that we might actually think for ourselves. And so now they've created this body that will do 2 things. Number one, it'll use taxpayer dollars to work through the mainstream media and flood the airwaves with whatever their propaganda narrative is that they're pushing at any given time and try to drown out anyone with alternate views. And number 2, they will silence dissenting voices through intimidation. I think the thing to recognize with this, just real quick, is that this isn't something new. This is something that they have already been doing, that's happening right now. The only difference is they're formalizing it, making it official, which, if there's a silver lining in this, they're revealing exactly who they are and why they're doing it, what they're trying to accomplish. And it allows us, the American people, to stand up and say, hey, you know what? We're not going to let you get away with this crap. We will take a stand, we will reject it, and we will throw out of office those who are continuing to push and propagate this undemocratic anti-free speech mission.
Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today?
I showed tapes of Joe Biden. I'm going to show you tapes of Joe Biden in 2008 and 12 and 16. And then I have a question on the other side.
In our bilateral relationships with nations with whom we deal and have serious trade deficits, we have to be willing to put more cards on the table.
Now they got a new plan. Trust me, it's not going to cost you any more. Folks, follow your instincts on this one.
They put one foot in front of the other. They keep going. That's the unbreakable spirit of the people of America. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
I want to thank the former general. I keep calling him general, but the guy who runs that outfit over there.
I know you probably don't want this question. You're a Democratic Party member. Do you see a precipitous cognitive decline in Joe Biden?
I think it's distressing, Sean, to see that. I think that it's important that as we look at what you've just played out and what you're seeing is that we not just focus on Joe Biden, but that we actually, which is really kind of a distraction away from, to me, what is the more serious issue here, which is it's clear that Joe Biden's the front man and that there is the permanent Washington establishment behind the curtains that are pulling the strings. You know, I don't believe that Joe Biden came up with this Department of Propaganda. There are other people in this permanent Washington establishment who are calling the shots, who are making the decisions that have a very real impact, negative impact on our democracy and on our freedom. And it's important for us as the American people to see very clearly what's happening, not allow them to distract us, and stand up strongly against it in defense of our country and our Constitution and our freedom.
Thinking, innovative, and totally open-minded.
Our Father,
Tommy Nation Politics.
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today?
Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread.
Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today? Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today? Tommy Nation Politics.
Part of Russian President Vladimir Putin's justification for invading Ukraine was to prevent it from joining NATO and strengthening the Western alliance by adding another member nation that shares a border with Russia. Now, in the wake of the invasion, the leaders of neighboring Finland say they want to join NATO. They would like NATO membership, quote, without delay. In a joint statement, the president and prime minister said NATO membership would strengthen Finland's security. As a member of NATO, Finland would strengthen the entire defense alliance. Finland's addition would double the shared border between Russia and NATO territories, and Sweden could follow suit. The Kremlin responded to Finland's decision, calling it a threat. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Russia will be forced to take retaliatory steps, both of a military, technical, and other nature. This all comes as the fighting continues in Ukraine, with Russia making little progress as it suffers more setbacks.
Because you know, deep down, you deserve to be punished. Don't you, Mr.
We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today? Good? Well, it's Tommy Nation Tuesday, and we've got some news going on.
Inconceivable!
First, yesterday we had two amazing things happen. We've got the Federal Election Commission. They were deadlocked, decided they won't punish Trump. Oh, isn't that crazy, guys? Deadlocked over whether his campaign broke the law by masking how it was spending cash during the 2020 campaigns. That's interesting, guys. So, I'm reading from Yahoo News. That has effectively set a series of new precedents that have slowly whittled away the law governing how money can be used in national politics. Still unclear is what sort of legal rationale was used to justify this decision. It's so interesting, guys, when they want to talk about money in politics. Why do they talk about in the conglomerate cable companies that are reporting this? Talk about the fact that while Donald Trump's not being punished for his they're deadlocked because why? I never understand the neoliberal logic to this. Maybe they're deadlocked because everything that the Republicans do, the the Democrats also do. Speaking of the Democrats, guys, we've got a one hell of a fun little trial. Somebody lied to the FBI. False statements, huh? False statements. Who could it be? Maybe it was a Trump campaign official. Maybe it was a collusion with Russia. No? Let's see what's going on here, guys. Check this out.
So let's talk about this Sussman trial today. Michael Sussman is a former partner at the law firm Perkins Coie. And this guy was, one of his partners was Mark Elias, who's a campaign law specialist who represented the Clinton campaign. And Michael Sussman one day walked into the FBI and said, I got a great tip for you. Oh my gosh, this bad stuff is going on with Donald Trump and this bank, and you should go check it out because I love my country and I just want you to know that we're looking at a potential traitor here. And they said, oh, are you affiliated with anybody, you know, like on the Clinton side? No, just here as a private concerned citizen. And that, of course, wasn't true. Michael Sussman denies all that. Okay, denies all that. And by the way, the FBI did know. They knew that who he was with and why he was there. But still, it was a lie. I mean, even if, you know, it's still a lie, even if you know you're being lied to. That's what he's on trial for. And this is what the judge in that case has ruled, Devin. He said that they can absolutely try to prove that he lied to the FBI. He has said that they can try to prove some aspects of what the special prosecutor John Durham has described as the joint venture to defraud the government. Like, why would you do that? Who else was in it with you? Like, what would your motivation have been to lie? But he's not going to allow him to go to prove the joint venture's full scope and membership because they have an alleged conspiracy. So it's like a little bit of a net to get the people around Sussman, but it's not the full fisherman's net to try to get everybody who's in on this. Do I have it right, basically?
Yeah. So we can unpack that a little bit. So what's happening here is that they got Sussman on something that really pits him against the dirty cops at DOJ and FBI. So what happened, remember when Sussman walks in, this is after the election when a cabal of them decide, this is after, when I say after the election, we got to go back. Yeah. After the election of 2016, Donald Trump wins. So earlier in the last segment, you asked me, kind of, how did I know something was wrong? Well, it was because shortly after that election, we had our normal briefing that would be an after an election at the House Intelligence Committee, and everything was normal. And in fact, that was the real intelligence. I still go back to that. So 3 weeks after the election, yeah, Putin's a thug. Putin did bad things. Putin does the things he always does, but it was nothing, no like huge ordeal where he's working with Donald Trump and the Republicans. There was no evidence there. And at the time, and that just went away. So there was no issue. And then about 10 days later, all of a sudden, around the 1st of December, 2016, this whole thing gets blown up again and say, oh, no, there's evidence of this. And I said, well, wait a second. You just told us there was not any evidence, right? Like, how did this change? And of course, they would say nothing. Oh, we're going to do a report, right? Obama commissioned a report. Obama and Biden commissioned a report. And it got done in record time for any government report that I've ever seen, including, with the Christmas and New Year's. This thing was done in a matter of a month, right? So it's commissioned first part of December, and it's done right at the beginning of January when the new Congress gets sworn in. And then we go to a briefing, and they call us all together, a gang of 8. Oh my God, this is really important. And nothing. Comey's there. All these guys are there. Nothing, zero. I'm like, well, where, I didn't say it like this, but where the hell are the Russians? Like, what are you guys talking about here? Oh, well.
Where the hell are the Russians? Well, we have no Russians, but we have 3 people that lied to the FBI, all on the Democratic side. And Trump, who, by the way, the Campaign Legal Center, which is a nonprofit organization, brought the complaint to the FEC, Federal Election Commission, complaining that Trump was, quote, spending from mandatory public disclosure. He was laundering hundreds of millions of dollars through companies that were tied to his former campaign manager, Brad Parscale. This is what it says in Yahoo News. The practice has been long considered against the law. But in recent years, the FEC, which is evenly split between Democrats and Republicans, has frequently deadlocked on major decisions such as this one. Did you hear that, guys? They're evenly split between Democrats and Republicans, the Federal Election Commission. So naturally, guys, one hand washes the other. And you can't possibly, you've got to be deadlocked because you can't try Trump for the crimes that the Democrats have done as well. Case in point, guys, Azov Battalion, a former FEC attorney who is now the Campaign Legal Center's vice president and legal director, said the commission won't release its legal reasoning for several weeks. He said filing an appeal would hinge on more certain details. It depends on what's in the case file, though, he said. All we have is notification of deadlock. All we have is notification of deadlock, huh? Now, in a similar case, in March, the FEC found probable cause that Hillary Clinton, in the 2016 presidential campaign, and the Democratic National Committee, the DNC, had violated campaign law by misreporting spending on research that eventually became the infamous Steele dossier. And this is where we're at today. Michael Sussman, on the Durham report, having a trial. He hasn't pled the fifth yet, but we'll see how it goes. There's a lot of dirty henchmen and minions that are going to be ready to fall in this wake until we get to the big boss, Hillary Clinton. My guess is if the Republicans take the House and Senate, they're going to do investigations on all of the Democrats, because the Democrats have been doing investigations on the Republicans. Insurrection Commission. Yada, yada, yada. Recuse yourself, Mr. Thomas. Yada, yada, yada. Protest at your private home, Mr. Thomas. Yada, 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 yada. You know, liberals. Doing all the things that don't really make any change. It's a sad state of affairs, guys, but what really doesn't make any change is voting for Democrats who violate the laws and regulations of the Federal Election Commission that you have complained against Donald Trump, guys. It's not helping or changing things for the better when you decide to do those crimes.
Get off the stage!
Or tap phones, or use the CIA to do regime change wars, guys. It's not very progressive. So,
the aftermath of Russian airstrikes on the southern port city of Odessa in Ukraine. This place is a supply line to the world, and weapons shipments from NATO countries arrive here.
22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections.
Ukraine's seaports are also vital to the global food supply, and shortages are already impacting Africa and Asia.
Ukraine is the wheat basket of Europe, and it's sitting on 8 billion euros worth of wheat right now from last year's harvest. They cannot export it. They have no access to the sea. This is one of the key issues that we must address.
In the industrial hub of Mariupol, Ukrainian officials fear people are still trapped in the besieged Azovstal steel plant, despite the evacuation of more than 350 people last week.
Today we must understand that only if there is a stable ceasefire will we and our brave fighters be able to find answers to these questions.
I yield 2 minutes to the representative from Georgia.
Hey guys, from Georgia is recognized for 2 minutes.
How's everyone?
Thank you. A rise in opposition to the Ukrainian supplemental bill, $40 billion. But there's no baby formula for American mothers and babies. An unknown amount of money to the CIA in the Ukraine supplemental bill, but there's no formula for American babies and mothers. $54 million in COVID spending in Ukraine, but there's no formula for American babies and mothers. $900 million for nonprofits and organizations in Ukraine, but there's no formula for American babies and mothers. $8.7 billion for economic support and funding in Ukraine, but there's no formula for American mothers and babies. If this is about claiming that it's about saving lives, let's be real, then we would care about war-torn countries like Ethiopia. So that's a bunch of hypocrisy, because I never hear Ethiopia brought up
Were
here.
there civilians at Azovstal? It is believed that there are, and they're waiting to be evacuated.
As Russian President Vladimir Putin intensifies his attacks from the air, U.S. intelligence believes this will be a drawn-out fight, and there is no clear winner.
That is affirmative
intelligence?
The most sophisticated computer in the world.
We assess President Putin is preparing for a prolonged conflict in Ukraine, during which he still intends to achieve goals beyond the Donbass. We assess that Putin's strategic goals have probably not changed, suggesting he regards the decision in late March to refocus Russian forces on the Donbass as only a temporary shift to regain the initiative after the Russian military's failure to capture Kyiv.
But Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky says there is reason to celebrate.
The armed forces of our state have provided good news from Kharkiv region to all of us. The occupiers are gradually being pushed out of Kharkiv. I'm grateful to our defenders who are holding the line and showing truly superhuman strength to drive out the army of invaders.
Ukrainian forces say they've reclaimed at least half a dozen villages to the north and northeast of the city of Kharkiv, close to the country's border with Belarus, and they credit the weapons arriving from the west.
And more are coming. $6 billion worth of both equipment and training, as well as intelligence support for the Ukrainian military. The funds stem from a nearly $40 billion aid package just passed by the House of Representatives. The Senate will now take up the measure, where it's expected to receive bipartisan support.
My oath of office is to the U.S. Constitution, not to any foreign nation. And no matter how sympathetic the cause, my oath of office is to the national security of the United States of America. We cannot save Ukraine by dooming the U.S. economy. This bill under consideration would spend $40 billion. This is the second spending bill for Ukraine in 2 months. And this bill is 3 times larger than the first. Our military aid to Ukraine is nothing new, though. Since 2014, the United States has provided more than $6 billion in security assistance to Ukraine, in addition to the $14 billion Congress authorized just a month ago. If this bill passes, the U.S. will have authorized roughly $60 billion in total spending for Ukraine. For those who say this is not enough, for those of you in this chamber who say that our military spending is never enough, let's put $60 billion into perspective. According to Elias Youssef, a security assistant at the Stimson Center, Kiev would become the largest yearly recipient of U.S. military aid of the past 2 decades. Except for the top 5 countries, $60 billion is more than every other country in the world spends on their entire military expenditures. If this gift to Ukraine passes, our total aid to Ukraine will almost equal the entire military budget of Russia. And it's not as if we have that money lying around. We will have to borrow that money from China to send it to Ukraine.
They see that the whites are so evenly divided that every time they vote, the race is so close, they have to go back and count the votes.
We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
The 2020 election was the most secure
election in American history.
But still, make the claim. Find a threat, invent a threat, or find one somewhere, and hype it beyond comprehension. Neutralize the bizarreness of that supposed and overhyped threat. Neutralize the bizarreness of it through propagandistic mass repetition.
And which means that any bloc, any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You can keep Johnson in Washington, D.C., or you can send him back to his Texas cotton patch.
Now on the deadly shooting at a Buffalo grocery store. Diary entries revealing how the suspected gunman plotted the rampage. This is a live look at the Tops Friendly grocery store. Investigators say the suspect visited that store back in March, where he recorded the number of black people who were shopping there. According to a diary entry posted online, he even talked with the store's security guard, obviously disturbing details there.
You're the one who sent Kennedy to Washington. You're the one who put the present Democratic administration in Washington, D.C.
They also feel that the nation isn't doing nearly enough to address white supremacy and gun control. FBI agents are collecting and documenting evidence from this weekend's mass shooting at the Tops supermarket in Buffalo. Officials say the suspected gunman had plans to continue his deadly rampage.
If not for the quick response of the Buffalo Police Department, he certainly would have killed more people in this immediate area.
Investigators say the 18-year-old specifically targeted the store because he wanted to kill as many black people as possible.
The whites were evenly divided. It was the fact that you threw 80% of your votes behind the Democrats that put the Democrats in the White House. When you see this, you can see that the Negro vote is the key factor. And despite the fact that you are in a position to be the determining factor, what do you get out of it? The Democrats have been in Washington, D.C. only because of the Negro vote. They've been down there 4 years. And all other legislation they wanted to bring up, they brought it up and gotten it out of the way, and now they bring up you. And now they bring up you. You put them first and they put you last. Because you're a chump. A political chump. In Washington, D.C., in the House of Representatives, there are 257 who are Democrats. Only 177 are Republicans. In the Senate, there are 67 Democrats. Only 33 are Republicans. The party that you bash controls 2/3 of the House of Representatives and the Senate, and still they can't keep their promise to you.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, they were trying to lock her out of running again. Turns out she is going to run again, guys. She's going to run again. And she's probably going to win because she's been saying some things that make sense, guys, more so than the Democratic Party, which literally freaks me out. This woman is not too smart, but she does have, seems, some sort of common sense.
Ruling that controversial Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is eligible to run for re-election. You might remember that a group of voters had challenged that eligibility. They pointed to her role in the January 6th insurrection, her actions leading up to and on that date. I want to bring in NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams and MSNBC legal analyst Danny Savalos. Pete, can you bring us up to speed on this ruling that's just coming into us here, the significance of it?
Sure, and I should say that this is not the last chapter in this saga. Okay. There's one more step here. This is a finding by an administrative law judge, and the way it works under Georgia law is if somebody challenges the qualifications of a candidate to be on the ballot, it goes before an administrative law judge who has a hearing. This judge had a hearing in April. The judge reaches findings, and then that is recommended to the Secretary of State. So this is going to be up to the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, to make the final decision. His office says he will. So, having set the table, what the issue here is the 14th Amendment says no candidate can run for office if they have engaged in insurrection, and that was the claim here. That her support for the Trump claim about the election being stolen, or saying on an interview, this is our 1776 moment, that she was egging on the people who eventually stormed the Capitol. What the judge says here, there just isn't enough evidence to show that she, quote, engaged in insurrection. Even assuming, the judge says, that the invasion, the Capitol riot, was in fact an insurrection, the challengers never presented enough evidence that she took any action, direct physical efforts, contribution of money or her personal services, issuing directives or marching orders, passing along intelligence, or even statements of encouragement that actually furthered the Capitol riot. There is no evidence, the judge says, that she communicated with or issued directives to people who were engaged in the invasion. So
there was no way she was involved? Well, that kind of sucks, man. Kind of sucks. Let's look up the definition of insurrection, guys. Let's look up the definition. We'll be saying insurrection all day long. Let's find out what this fucking shit says. I'm looking up the definition of insurrection here. It's gotta be horrible. It's gotta be like moida. It's gotta be like pedophile. It's gotta be all nasty, nasty word. Don't it? Insurrection. This is from I don't know, Microsoft Bing. I just Microsoft Binged it, guys. Just be honest with you. Insurrection. A violent uprising against an authority or government. Wow. That's almost like child porn or murder. Synonyms for insurrection: rebellion, revolt, uprising, revolution, civil disobedience, fighting in the streets, coup d'etat. Interesting, guys. This is some rebellious, civil disobedient, non-conventional wisdom stuff, this insurrection. Anybody who is involved in this insurrection should really be ashamed of themselves for standing up against a power of government or authority. I mean, do you know who you are in this oligarchy? You're nothing. You're just a little pawn, and we use your labor to make wealth for us elites, and we say that you'll own nothing and be happy. You're nothing. You're a little box we check during the midterms. Or our puppets of the rich do. Us, on the other hand, we don't give a shit about your boxes. We just want you to work, work, and work, and work, and work until you're too old to work. Then we'll get your kids to work too. Cut your Social Security. Joe said he's gonna do it. He tried a third time and a fourth time. Everything in the government. Let's put it all on the table, fat. Meanwhile, guys, we've got, let's just analyze this as a free thinker, guys. It's kind of funny, because you guys literally thought Trump was like the menace of it all. Turns out, Hillary Clinton has 3 people involved in her campaign being indicted. Russian collusion was a hoax. And everything that you projected onto Trump, you've done yourself. I mean, literally you have, guys. Including rigging the primaries from a progressive candidate. You thought that Trump was just too mean to those corporate Republicans who fucking started the Iraq war that Joe Biden decided to push his resolution through Congress with. You guys went hand in hand to Iraq. You went hand in hand, bailing out the banks of Wall Street. Hand in hand. Here's your guy. Here's this guy upsetting your little apple cart, vetoing your little military spending bill when it's increasing, as the American people are left clueless and holding their ass in a pandemic. Trump vetoes it. That must have really pissed you guys off. I have to hand it to this guy. Inconceivable. I mean, more and more I'm starting to like Trump, guys. You guys make me like Trump. Did y'all know that? Literally, I would not think about Trump. I'd literally never even give a shit about Trump. But turns out, guys, with all of your malarkey, as Joe Biden says, as Miss Josephine Biden, Elizabeth, he calls it malarkey when you're just fucking shouting shit out like insurrections. You're investigating the other side, which is insurrection. And you're neglecting your duties and your sovereign sworn oaths to the American people. But the chat's open, guys. Let me know what you guys think about that. We're gonna take a quick break, and we'll come back and I'll answer some questions from the chat if you have any. Here's your chance, guys, to let your voices be heard, because they're not being heard anywhere in the corporatocracy, oligarchy, United States Incorporated of America. Be free thinking, innovative, and open-minded, guys. Chat's open. I'll see y'all in 10. Tommy Nation Politics.
Totally ignoring, completely ignoring our own border crisis, our own baby formula crisis, and brutal inflation, skyrocketing gas prices that no one can afford, but $40 billion for Ukraine? Stop funding regime change and money laundering scams and U.S. politician cover-ups of their crimes in countries like Ukraine. The American people do not support paying for constant U.S. involvement in foreign affairs while our own government fails our own country. Let me remind everyone here, we swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America and our borders. We should be paying attention to our country right now. I yield back. Thank you.
Because you're a chump. Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Over the weekend, he pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder. Ruth Whitfield was one of the lives lost. She stopped at the store after visiting her husband of 68 years at a nursing home. Family members were overcome by grief at a news conference.
But we're not just hurting, we're angry, we're mad. This shouldn't have happened.
Attorney Ben Crump is representing the Whitfield family and is demanding accountability beyond the suspect.
The people who curate the hate, the people who inspire the hate on websites and internet services and cable news stations.
New York State officials say the suspect, who lived hundreds of miles away, threatened a shooting at his high school last year. Investigators say he plotted this attack over several months, and they're looking at a 180-page document he posted online describing himself as a white supremacist and an anti-Semite. At the White House, President Biden paid tribute to Aaron Salter, a retired police officer who worked as a store security guard.
He actually was able to shoot the assailant twice, but he had on a bulletproof vest.
To show the Ukrainian people that this war has to stop, and this war has been brutal, and that the people of the United States stand with the people of Ukraine. You feel it.
You can see that really the expression from Elena Zelenska that this was really a powerful moment for her. She actually called it an act of courage by the First Lady to come. And, you know, really that moment is going to get all the headlines today. But there was also another one earlier in the day. The First Lady traveled to Košice, another town near the border of Ukraine in Slovakia, and met a woman named Victoria who was there with her daughter. She talked about really just how painful, how she can't even explain to her children what is happening, why they've had to leave. And that's another powerful moment for the First Lady.
His life in the process.
Now let's talk more about that threat the suspect allegedly made last year. According to law enforcement, he was given a mental health evaluation, but he was never charged with a crime, and he was never barred from owning firearms. Law enforcement officials say it appears he slipped through the cracks. In Buffalo, New York, Michael George, KPIX 5.